For my National Day History project on Fritz Pollard, I chose to interview my great-uncle, Linwood Hart Sr. Linwood Hart was born in Baltimore in 1944 as the fourth of five boys to Alice and Willie Hart Sr. He excelled at the sports of football and baseball from an early age on. Uncle Lin was a childhood best friend of the first African-American billionaire, Reginald F. Lewis, and has written a book on their relationship titled Reginald F. Lewis Before T.L.C. Beatrice, The Young Men Before the Billion-Dollar Empire. Linwood Hart graduated from Baltimore's Edmondson High School and Virginia State University. After a stint with the AFL's Buffalo Bills, Uncle Lin entered a career of successful corporate work. Uncle Lin has two children and is retired in Chesterfield, Missouri, with his wife, my Aunt Frances. Okay, so my first question is, when you hear the name Fritz Pollard, what image is persistent?
I think of a man who was determined, a man who had considerable athletic ability, and a man who just decided that nothing was going to stop him to reach his chosen goal, which was to be an athlete or a professional athlete, which is kind of incredible in those days because Pollard goes way back to the turn of the century or earlier. But he was an outstanding football player and the first African-American football player, professional. Also ended up coaching, if I'm not mistaken, later on in his career.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Next question. When you grew up in Baltimore in the 1940s and 50s, did the African American and Caucasian community get along well?
Well, I would describe it this way. I think they learned to coexist, but there never was very much coming together of blacks and whites in those days. The community where I grew up and where your granddad grew up was isolated, strictly African-American community. And to be more specific, for a long time, we did not even know that there were white people around because we lived in a very isolated area. Mm-hmm. But I would say they coexisted, but there never was much harmony or togetherness with the communities as I recall growing up.
Okay. Many see Fritz Pollard as a pioneer of professional sports. When you signed with the Bills in the early 1960s and reflect on your experience as an African-American player at that period in time, do you see yourself as a pioneer or a hero?
Well, I'm probably more in the pioneer thought camp than the heroic camp because, after all, we were just athletes and we weren't, doing things like saving the world from poverty or anything like that. But, yeah, I think pioneers is a good word because so many of the athletes that I played with were denied the opportunity to really excel on the big stage. I like to tell people when they talk about blacks and sports, particularly football in this case, that many of the people that I played with, guys that I played with, were exceptional athletes. If you think about it, if we still had segregated schools today, all of these black athletes that you see playing at the top schools in the country, they would be playing at CIAA, MEAC schools, and traditionally black HBCUs. That's where these guys would be playing. And when I was growing up, that's where we all played. So some of the top athletes in the country were playing in those schools, and at schools like my school, Virginia State University, which is an HBCU, were top athletes, and they were all playing in that circuit. I think of them as pioneers because those that broke into the NFL and made it to pro football, all of them succeeded, in spite of what people said about their talent and skills. They almost all succeeded. So, yeah, like a pioneer, I like that term.
Okay. As an African-American athlete in the early 1960s, did you have any obstacles or conflicts that involved race?
Well, as athletes, the big hurdle was to perform on the big stage of professional football, professional baseball, professional basketball with whites. That was an obstacle. Being able to show what the skill level was and to demonstrate it on what I always called, the big stage. That was a huge hurdle for a lot of young men, and so I think this being denied the right to play at a professional level was a huge hurdle. But as I said, that was later overcome, and I was around to see much of that take place.
Okay, you're familiar with the NFL's Rooney Rule, correct?
Yes, I am.
Okay, do you think that it's effective, or do you think that it should be revised in any way?
Well, first of all, I would say yes, for certain it's been effective because if you look around the number of black coaches and black athletes and others who have made it and demonstrated their skill and their prowess as managers, administrators, as well as athletes, I think it definitely has worked. There's always this question of when do we stop doing something that hasn't been totally repaired. If you ask me about race relations in this country, I think I would place my answer in that space. I don't think the country has completely dealt with these issues of race. Discrimination is still afoot, and there's always some issue around race in this country. So no, I don't think it should be changed. I think we should continue with it and accept the fact that it has worked. If you look at the numbers, and we need to keep going until society in itself has dealt more effectively with this issue of race in this country.
Okay. Do you see a bright future in professional sports? Do you believe that racism and use of the N-word will someday may be shunned out of our society?
Well, I hope the use of the N-word is shunned out of our society because I'm old enough to remember what that word really meant in terms of its power to hurt individual psyche, to destroy a person's self-respect, and also in many cases to end someone's life. And that N-word is a word that I think has no place in our vocabulary. As long as people have race as an issue in the rest of our day-to-day life. So I don't think I would hope that in my lifetime that I don't see that word become something that's of popular use. I'm afraid that it's becoming more and more that way now, but I think the young people who do that or use terminology like that don't understand the real history of it. So I don't see much future in that word and the use of it.
Okay, what do you think Fritz Pollard's legacy is? When people look down at his stats, at his achievements, and how he impacted our society, what do you think people remember him as?
Well, I have a vague recollection of his stats and the details, but anytime you're first, anytime you are someone who breaks a tradition, whether it be a good tradition or, as in this case, racism, a bad tradition, you're going to be remembered for that. You're going to remember for being the first one to do it. As the first professional African-American professional player, football player, the first to coach professionally, he'll always be remembered as the first. The guy who broke open the door. It's like the old James Brown record where James Brown, and you may not recall the title, but I forgot the name of the song, but the theme went, I don't want anybody to give me nothing. Open the door. I'll take it myself. That's kind of what these pioneers represent, at least as I think of them. They didn't want anybody to give them anything. They just wanted the door to be open so they could walk in and achieve for themselves. And so when I think of Fritz Pollard and all the other blacks who came on before and after him, they were tradition breakers. They were first. They were pioneers, as you said earlier. And so for that's how I think of them, as courageous people who demonstrated that it could be done. So that's how I would think of him. He's a model for anybody thinking about breaking tradition.
Okay, that's my last question. Thank you for your time today. And the project is going well, so thank you again.
Well, thank you for thinking of me when this past project came along and let me participate with it in it with you. So good luck, Rick, and I hope it goes well for you.
Thank you.